Hello, fellow parents. Mike Allen here from the Family Life Office of the Diocese. We recently, as you know, surveyed parents from across the diocese regarding the challenges we are facing during this pandemic and lockdown. Your responses prompted us to initiate a series of conversations with local resource persons who can give us practical guidance and tools for some of these challenges. So I'm really happy to introduce you to Ellen Martin, who is a local author. She's a good friend, an author, and a mother, parent from Wilmore, Kentucky. She offers workshops, parent coach sessions, and staff training through her ministry, A Life Shared. Her new release book, available on Amazon, is A Life Shared, Meaningful Conversations with Our Kids, which I highly recommend. Ellen has received both Masters of Arts in Christian Education and Master of Divinity degrees from Asbury Theological Seminary. She and her husband, Andrew, have been married for 16 years and have 5 sons. And you can find more information and resources at Ellen's website, www.alifesharedwithkids.com. So, Ellen, hello.
Good morning, Mike.
Thanks for taking time to encourage our parents, all of us, in the midst of this unexpected trial. You know, it's hard enough to be a parent in normal times, let alone in the middle of a pandemic.
Yeah.
Well, I know your experience and expertise centers on how to have meaningful and fruitful conversations within our families, particularly between parents and children. I know you talk a lot about how these opportunities that we sometimes don't recognize just come through the day-to-day of living of life. So how does this current crisis provide both a challenge and an opportunity for these conversations?
You know, I usually say to parents that the challenge is the opportunity for engagement, right? When life is, before all of this, you know, spring is our busiest time of the year with 5 boys. We have a kind of a family thing to control the chaos where we start extracurriculars like sports and whatnot in first grade. So this year we would have had 4 kids, 2 signed up for track, high school track, middle school track. We would have had baseball and we would have had soccer. And our only chance really to talk was going to be in the car going from A to B to C to D. But now we're all together. And as I said to some of my kids the other night, and they're used to me engaging them in conversation, right? I highly value it. That's why I wrote a book about it. And the other day I just said, you know, boys, I think I've run out of words for right now. Like, we're just together a whole lot. And for some of us, we need that to learn the practice anew of conversation with each other. So it's a real gift. And then for some of us, like myself, who we do it all the time, it can just be a little much. So I would say those are the challenges and the opportunities, is finding that balance and realizing that, you know, any conversation where you're just exhausted and done, everybody knows it. We all feel it, and it's no longer enjoyable. So finding some healthy boundaries, which I also talk about in the book. If I did a coronavirus pandemic edition, I would modify that chapter at this point.
You know, the people that we live with are the best tools of humility for us. You know, I always say when I teach marriage preparation classes, I can sound like a real expert on marriage when my wife's not here.
You know, right before this, I said to my husband, it's the first time I've had on makeup and like actually bothered with my hair in a while. And I walked over and I said, so how do I look? And the son who's just wrapped up 8th grade yesterday says, decent.
Hey, that's pretty good coming from
I'll take decent.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
You clean up well, Mom, right?
That's it. And he's brief he's either brief or verbose. So decent worked.
So we know that, you know, with the parents as Christians, we have the primary role in the faith development of our children. How do daily conversations provide an opportunity here? Does this shape, the shape of these conversations change as our children age?
All right. So you just asked me 2 questions, and unfortunately I don't have them in front of me. So I stay connected here, right? Instead of down here. So Sure. Can you ask the first one in that question again, please, Mike?
Yeah, we have this idea that, you know, this vocation of parenthood, we have been given a primary role in terms of their own development as Christian disciples.
Yeah.
How do we have an opportunity for that, particularly in daily conversations?
Right.
Because sometimes we think about sort of structured, which, times for family prayers, scripture
Hmm.
reading, and so forth, which are good, and church attendance, of course.
Oh, yeah.
But we don't necessarily always think about it in terms of just the ongoing, normal, ordinary conversations.
Right. It's funny because in Deuteronomy, what do they say? Talk about it when you wake, talk about it when you go about your day, and talk about it when you lie down at night. And I think that the truth is that for those of us who call Jesus Lord, where we say, "You are my God and I am yours," as we choose to live into that at deeper and deeper and deeper levels of what that means in our daily life, then everything, whether it looks like it's part of our faith or not, becomes faith formative if we allow it to. So it's funny, a lot of what we talk about in our home, it really is just daily life. It's not couched in doctrine. It's not Christianese, as people would refer to it, language. But it is shaping our faith. I loved it recently. I'm reading a book, an old gem by Eugene Peterson. And he says, faith is not to form our families. Family is where faith is formed. And so I know, right? Like he just flips it on our head because so often we want our faith to form us. But the truth is it's backwards. Our faith is formed inside of our family, the working out of our salvation. So a lot of it is just simply, what do we value, and who as parents are we choosing are the values. Every family has their own sense of values. We're not all aware of them. In our family, honesty is a high value. Connectedness is a high value. Conversation is a high value. And so as we take these things that we value and we make them a part of our daily life, they shape us. Years ago, when I discovered that I have a history or a struggle with anxiety, I wasn't aware of it. It had shaped my life. Had a third child, and one day when Andrew was getting up from lunch to go back to work, I literally froze and discovered that I was having a full-blown anxiety attack. And I mention all that to say that after that discovery, after beginning to treat that and respond to that and live life anew, the Lord invited me to place a filter of everything for my life. And it was, if you can love while doing this, do it. But if you can't, it's got to go. And so how we interact with one another as family, for me, has to go through the filter of love. And so when I'm sighing all the time, when I am reactive rather than responsive, then I know that something's really off, right? But the way we talk to one another is one of the most powerful ways we can love one another. When we're saying to one another, I see you and I value you and you are of great worth, that's faith formative. Because if we can enjoy our children through just the daily life of conversation, then they know that God can enjoy them too. And I mean, how many adults struggle with believing that God enjoys them, that he delights in them? So a lot of what I think is most faith formative doesn't sound like faith at all. Sure. But it's that modeling of who God is by his grace through our daily lives to our children, and living in that for ourselves, and then inviting our children to receive that.
Well, yeah, there's that old saying that faith is more caught than taught. I think it might be a corollary to that too, is especially in a time of crisis like this, and when things are, I don't know, I would say abnormal, but it's becoming the new normal in some ways. But it's such that I guess our children and those that live with us are formed as much by our reactions as we are our actions. They learn, they get their sea legs, by watching us and seeing how we react.
Oh, definitely. And unfortunately, my history early on as a mother was pretty reactive.
Oh, yeah.
And I grew up in a pretty volatile home, and there's a lot behind that. But I can remember our oldest saying to me at about 3.5, our marriage was pretty strained. I was trying to wrap up a seminary degree. It was just a hard time. And I can remember him saying to me at 3.5, Mama, you make Jesus cry.
Hmm.
What do you do with that?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a child just putting on a plate before you an opportunity for a faith conversation in the most plain sense, right? And I can remember just taking a deep breath and saying, baby, I know Jesus and I cry together a lot right now, but it's going to be okay because he and I are together. And I said, you know how we talk about the Holy Spirit? And he said, yes. And I said, he is helping mommy, and mommy is listening as he leads me and guides me, and it's really going to be okay.
Hmm.
And I remember that to this day. In different times, I think to myself, is Jesus crying with me or for me right now? So yeah, I'm sometimes not really sure who invites the faith conversations more, us or our children. If we have ears to hear, it's probably our children inviting us as they try to understand what all of this is about, whether it appears to be really tender like that or antagonistic and provocative as teenagers, who they're not going to attend worship at home or, whatever, as they're trying to find their legs about their own identity.
Yeah. So, and you've got 5 sons. What's the age range?
Yeah, I tend to round up. I'm kind of funny that way. I do it so much that my husband said the other night, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm going to be 49 this year. And I was like, no, baby, you'll be 48. We've just said it so much. You already think you are.
Hey, I'm 54. I'm starting to round down.
Oh, that's funny. So yeah, the oldest one is 15. He'll be 16 this fall. He's looking at cars regularly. Online, it's pretty funny because he doesn't have the money to buy one. And then we've got one who'll be 14 this summer, and another one who's 12 in less than a month. He's already counting down for that birthday he won't have, and he just laughs about it now, which I'm grateful, or at least the party. And then we have a son who is 8 in January and a son who is 6 in January. So we were at 4 schools this year, and I'm so tickled pink to only be at 3 next year.
So, when you think, I know your experience there, we talk about these faith conversations, daily conversations. You talked about a pointed question or comment that came from your 3-year-old at one point.
Mm-hmm.
What are some, maybe, I guess, when we talk about how these conversations change as our children age, as we age, what stays the same and what's different?
Oh, I love that. Yeah, I had a coaching session yesterday, and I shared this practice that I've done with my boys. And I think that the most important thing, and yet the most challenging thing, right, is to meet our kids where they are. Not where they've been, not too much where they're headed, but where they are. You interact with a young child, and then you turn around and just, not even a full second later, the other child's right there, and you've got to pivot and remember that you're talking to a 15-year-old, not a 6-year-old, and treat them like such. Mm-hmm. One of my big prayers is, may my children be the fullness of who you have made them to be, Lord Jesus. It's just one of the big things I pray. And so as I engage them, one of my questions is, Lord, what does that mean for me as the mama to be part of that? Because I am very limited in my capacity to know the fullness of what Jesus has for my children. So one of them is just meeting them where they are and helping sure that they know that all is well between us. Not that it's my job to make them happy, not that it's my job to coddle them. I definitely would not be defined as a more permissive parent. But one of the things I started doing when they were younger, when I could sense that something was off between us, I would say because I have boys, I would say, and feeling respected is important with my children. I would say, how respected do you feel by me? And I would hold out my hand and I would say, do you feel this respected? Which obviously is as much respect as I could give them, right? Or do you feel this respected, which is not at all, or somewhere in the middle? And they would show me. And I would accept it with no value, no judgment, no defense. And that's the tricky part. You can't ask questions like that if you're not ready to accept the answer with some humility. And then I would ask, what do I do that makes you feel respected? And they would tell me. And I'd say, okay, I will keep doing that. Thank you. And then I would ask, what do you need to feel more respected by me? And they would tell me. And I would say, I will ask Jesus to help me give you that kind of respect. Thanks. And that was it. If things were particularly bad, and I knew that they needed to rise to the occasion in respecting me as well. And you have to ask these questions not to manipulate what you're wanting, but a sincere conversation, because the kids have what I call a sixth sense. They just feel it if you don't mean it. And then I would ask, how much do you think you respect me? And it was almost always less than they expressed I was respecting them. Yeah. And so it was so insightful of helping me kind of gauge, not from my perspective, not from my filter, but theirs, of how are we doing in relationship with one another? And how can we choose to grow up in Christ in the way we honor and care for one another as family? That looks really different now that they're older. Typically that conversation is this long.
Sure.
Now that they're older, it's not this really sweet engagement, it's not a quick, oh yeah, I respect, So yesterday I asked one of my older children, because teenagers can be really hard to enjoy. I don't know if I'm the only parent feeling that way, but I said to our oldest, maybe 3 months ago, I said, I love you and I think you are amazing, but you're kind of making it hard for me to enjoy you lately. Could you help me out? That was that conversation. And he was like, yeah, I can do that. And that was it. And I had to choose to just let it go, because that was a positive thing, right? He saw it. He owned it. He was willing to do something different. I didn't get to ask what I could have said, do this or this. I just needed to let him deal with that. And we were done. Also, I don't look my older children in the eye as much for those conversations as I do my younger ones. My younger ones, it's what one therapist calls shoulder to shoulder, eye to eye, or face to face with my little kids, right? We're like down on their level. We're looking at them. With my older children, it's a lot better if we're in the car side by side.
Oh, yeah.
They're not exposed. They don't feel as vulnerable. It makes it a lot easier to be honest about where things are. And it also increases this sense of, it minimizes the fact that when we have conversations like that, we're taking a risk. We just are. Conversation fundamentally requires risk, because it's inviting us to share with one another. And youth are very aware of that. When I've worked with them, I'm like, what is a risk that you're not willing to take in conversation with your parents, or a conversation you'd like to have with your parents, but they make it hard? And man, they'll tell you, sorry, that's not good on Zoom, but one after another, they'll just rattle off all the reasons that it's hard for them to risk conversation with their parents, because they're so sensitive, insecure, like it's just hard. Brevity is key with my older kids. I asked that child the other day, we don't have a lot of things in common. He's very mechanically minded. I'm not, like, we just don't have a lot of things in common, except that we live in the same house. And we have the same family. And I asked him the other day, I said, do you know I enjoy you? And I really wasn't sure what he was going to say as an answer. And he said, yeah. And I said, how do you know that? He said, because of that conversation we just had before this. I didn't even know what that conversation was. It was that insignificant to me, but it meant that much to him. So those are the ways that conversations change, is brevity with older children, unless they just run with it, and a little more intentional engagement with younger children, because they're a little flighty. And yeah,
I like the intentional nature of that, because things like feelings of disrespect both ways in families can have over time, if they're not really dealt with and uprooted and talked about, they can have a corrosive effect and a cumulative effect over time. And that's when bitterness starts to come in. And I tell you what, once bitterness gets into a relationship, it's really tough to overcome.
Yeah, because I think it grows into something called resentment.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's painful stuff. And that's why it became just kind of this normal thing. And I couldn't tell you how often we did it. But when I knew things weren't right, but I didn't know what it was, instead of thinking I could figure it out by myself as the mother, which is such an easy posture to take, right? but instead a posture of humility of saying, hey, how are we? How are things here? In a way that was visual instead of articulate, which young children need. It was very formative for us.
Let's kind of go in a slightly different direction now. We did a recent survey of parents in our diocese. I think we had almost 200 people respond, really particularly about challenges that they're facing in this pandemic and lockdown. And the number one challenge, which was named by almost half of really the respondents, was the issue of motivation issues with children. Particularly I think schools are not in session, or at least not physically. They're doing this NTI, or non-traditional instruction, and parents feel like they've been thrust into this role that maybe unless they have been homeschooling parents, all of a sudden, even though they're still getting lessons from school, you have this motivation issue, and probably both in terms of schoolwork, chores, all the rest, physical activity, and I think a lot of parents feel frustration with this.
What? Let me just tell you that I have 3 of 5 children finished their NTI work finished their school year last night, and instead of rejoicing in that, I was like, I have 2 more still to go. So I feel the pain of parents, and I homeschooled. I did it for 6.5 years. And this has not been homeschooling. Because you're like the sub in your own house where you're supposed to be doing school, but it's hard. It's been hard. So I joked that we had the best of both worlds with my bigger boys. Like, you had an amazing experience where the Lord invited us to do school at home as a family, and we did that. And then he called us to send you to school, and we do that. And I think both have been amazing. This is a third option I never imagined. And I'm not sure amazing is the word I would use just yet. So yeah, motivation. How do we motivate our children? Can we divide it down into ages? Like, what age kids do you want to talk about motivating? Because it's just not, actually that's not, do you want to do it by ages, or do you want to do fundamentals?
We could do both. I mean, you've got the whole variety of ages there in your household.
Yes, we do. So I would say with the youngest that, whether it's schoolwork or chores, making it doable. Little people can be overwhelmed fairly easily, right? Because everything is new. I have a child my youngest child is not your standard kiddo, because he would say every day, I need to get my NTI work done. I mean, where does that kid come from? Exactly. And if I didn't get to it fast enough, because, I am finite and had other children plus my stuff, he would even cry. So he looks highly motivated to get this done. And then we sit down to do it. I don't want to do this. So, and if I was a newbie or in a bad moment, I'd be like, what's wrong with you? You said you wanted to do, I would just get frustrated with him and outwardly blame him for, being disappointed or not liking the schoolwork. But I think part of what we have to do is break it down into bite-sized pieces that they know are doable and that they can succeed in. Sitting down with young children and asking them to do an hour project, it's just probably not going to go well. It's just not going to go well. And that's not just with a 2-year-old or a 3-year-old or 4 or 5, even 6. I mean, there are a lot of 8-year-olds who, unless it's something they absolutely love and chose to do, like Legos or a movie, or depending on your family's practices, some kind of video game or something, they're probably not going to love working for an hour. So breaking it down into bite-sized pieces and saying, hey, we're going to work on this if you know that it's doable for 5 minutes. And for my children who are motivated, and this is part of knowing your child, which takes time and kind of troubleshooting and experimenting. For some of my kids, I can say, we're going to set a timer for 5 minutes. And when it's over, we'll take a break.
Hmm.
And you take a 5 or 10 minute break, because little children play as their work. Jean Piaget said it long ago, and there's so much truth to that. And so you do the little thing and then you let them go play. I do the same thing with chores. Saying to clean up your room when it looks like a bomb went off in it, I don't care how old you are. It's overwhelming. My
Sure.
husband has a pile that's been shifting from the office to the bedroom bed for 4 days. And I asked him yesterday, could you please deal with that today? And he's like, yeah. The truth is he's not motivated to do it. And it's easier just to move it back and forth.
Sure.
So we as adults need to remember that we have things we don't want to do. And again, there's a little humility to that, excuse me. So making things bite-sized and saying, you know what, we're going to do it for 5 minutes, then we're going to take a break. That's something that little kids can get on board with. Also positive expectations rather than setting yourself up with reward cycles that just grow and are difficult to keep up with. And really breed a spirit of entitlement and expectation to always be commended with a tangible thing after you've accomplished the task you're supposed to do, right? So, hey, I know that for 5 minutes you can pick up. I know you can. I've seen you do it. So when you're ready, when you say go, I'm going to set the timer. And I can't wait to hear everything you were able to pick up in 5 minutes. If you already know that your child has that ability, don't even go with them. Communicate to them through your actions that you trust they can do it, that they're capable of doing good work. And set that timer when they say go. Because if you don't and you set it and then they don't move, then you're frustrated and mad, right? I said go, it all goes down again. So set the timer for 5 minutes. When they say go, they're off and running and they come back, and when it goes off, they'll hear it no matter how large or small your house is. And they come back and you say, what'd you get done? And they tell you. And then you let them kind of do their thing for a minute. And then you say, all right, can we do 5 more minutes? And they say yes or no. And you say, okay, do you want to do 5 minutes in 3 minutes or 2 minutes? You're still just saying that they're going to do it, but you're giving them a sense of voice again in the process, right? You're sharing this with them. And actually, again, what are we doing? We're having a conversation. And so they say in 2 minutes, I'll do, probably they're going to say 3 minutes, I'll do it. So the 3 minute timer goes off and then you go again. Some people are like, oh my gosh, this is ridiculous. All this timer, it's a lot of work. The truth is in 20 minutes, things can get done that you could have fought over for an hour and a half. And what happens as you're doing a lot of things that they're not aware of, when I'm doing a teaching experience, a workshop, I call it my hidden curriculum, the stuff that I've built in that nobody knows because I never named. But with children, when you're doing things like that, you're validating their ability. You're telling them, I know that you can do this. When they whine a little bit and say it's hard, I know it's hard. That's why we're only doing it for 5 minutes. If it's a new skill that you're developing and they really don't have it, say, you know what, I can help you. We'll do it together for 5 minutes until they know with confidence that they don't need you, that they really can do it themselves. So a lot of it is remembering that we're developing skills with our children and for our children. We're supporting them and we're empowering them to be an active part of our family. That changes the whole thing of getting it done.
Sure.
It's not just getting it done. It's once again, really in the long view of parenting, it's faith formative. It's saying you're a part of us. When my children do work and when they come back, we pay them allowance, not because of money, as much as learning the practice of tithe, because gosh, let's be honest, that's really, really hard for a lot of adults.
Oh, yeah.
We know statistically, most people are not tithers. Because it's painful to give away 10%, right? We don't have really good teaching about tithe. So we started allowances with our kids at 5. And it wasn't the money, I don't think to this day, that motivated them. I think it was, thank you for being a part of our family and sharing our work. Work is something only family does. Our guests don't do it when they come here. It's a special thing we get to do together. When you look at work that way, it's an opportunity, it's a gift, it's a privilege, it's something that we share. It's not getting the stuff done. So that may be a long answer, but I think it really is Why do they have to do chores? What does it matter? And when you actually kind of think about that for a moment, and that's the kind of work I do as a parent coach, not trying to be a plug here for that service, but sometimes we just lose handle of how to do things. Nothing seems to work, but the truth is we're just getting this stuff done rather than really having an understanding of what this even matters and how it's shaping us as family with one another. So that's part of the motivation with work. As your kids get older, my 8-year-old doing NTI work at home, I've discovered how capable he is. I discovered that schoolwork's really hard for him to get engaged in and care about. It doesn't motivate him. I did something intuitively and prayerfully that was a tremendous risk for me as a mother. And thank God it didn't blow up in my face like some of the choices I have made have. I let him do his video time before he did his school time. And what it did was it created what 2 authors of The Self-Driven Child call flow. When you're doing things that you enjoy, that you're naturally motivated to do because they're meaningful to you, because they're satisfying to you, it literally creates a flow of dopamine in your brain, which is satisfying. And so when my child did his video time first, he was ready to be on his Zoom meeting every day with his teacher at 10 o'clock. He could do it by himself, have all his paperwork and everything ready with a reminder, hey, do you have all your stuff you need? Yeah. And he was off and running with his class for 45 minutes, and he didn't barely need me except for a few friendly reminders. Eventually, I discovered he didn't need me at all. So I think part of it is discovering what your children are really able to do and letting them do it rather than doing more for them than they need you to do. Because what that really does is undermines their motivation. Why should they do it if you'll do it for them?
Sure.
So sometimes we're cutting their feet out from underneath them in an effort to help them and support them rather than letting them discover their ability, which is in itself rewarding, right? And he was so proud of himself. Mom, I was like a minute late, but I'm there now. So those are some different things. If you've got time, there's one more thing about my child who was not going to do his last 10 algebra assignments.
Sure, go ahead.
So he's got a 4.4 in algebra, as he explains. And he explains to me that these little homework assignments are formative, not summative, which means they're a low percentage of his grade, right?
Right.
And I had to learn over time what those things mean. And he's like, Mom, I'm just not doing them. And again, I took a deep breath. And instead of assuming that I knew what was best for him, I said, if you're not going to do them, I need a list of reasons why. And I need the pros and cons of why you should or should not do them. I need a written list because that's how I would do it. And he's like, no, I can tell you right now. I said, okay. So he told me the pros and cons. And I said, if you're going to make an adult decision, a mature decision to not do them for these weighed pros, then you need to take the responsibility of your decision. That's what adults do. And you need to tell me your decision. You need to tell your father your decision because we're the adults who support you in life most closely and would love you the best. And you need to tell your teacher. All of a sudden, he's a little frustrated. And he's like, well, now you're trying to make me feel bad. I said, no, I'm not. I'm saying that if you're big enough to make a decision not to do work, that you should have the respect and responsibility to tell your teacher. So he's not looking for work that's never coming. And I said, because I know you respect this teacher. I know you think highly of him. And it's not fair for him to be waiting for work that you're not going to submit. And he was like, you're trying to force my hand. And the truth was I wasn't. I was just offering him a fuller perspective than he's got on his own as an 8th grader, right? Sure. And I said, no, you just feel convicted. And that doesn't feel very good, does it? Again, the faith piece, right? And he's like, I know. So I walk off. He's feeling convicted, which he just needs to deal with on his own with Jesus. And I said, let me know what you decide. I felt so free as a parent.
Sure.
Because we had That was on Tuesday of this week, and all the work's not due until next Friday. We could have fought over that every day until next Friday. But because I trusted my son to make a good decision and offered support to him so that he is making an informed decision, and then truly left that with him with nothing but letting those pieces fall where they were, with not "I told you so" or any of my own judgment and value on it, he ended up choosing to do the work. And the kicker was, when he saw the teacher again, he wouldn't have been able to look him in the face if he hadn't done the work and know that all was well.
Mm.
And I thought, oh my gosh, this is beautiful. This is beautiful because my son wrestled with something, not with me. He wasn't wrestling with me. It felt like it. It looked like it. He was wrestling with himself over what was good and right. And that's a phrase we use a lot in our household. He chose to honor somebody he respects. Yeah, I muted my cell phone, but not the landline that we have for our kids. Sorry about that. It'll quit in a second. Yeah. And he rose to the occasion, and he was really proud of himself. And I had asked him a couple of days later, "Hey, what's your plan? How are you doing?" And he had this great plan, and he actually ended up finishing it yesterday. So,
well, what that sounds like to me, Ellen, too, is that that frees you. One of the things that frees you from is one of the biggest burdens and temptations of parenting sometimes with motivation issues is nagging, because
what?
It's,
yeah,
I'm still learning this, but
it's hard
with motivation issues. It's like pushing a rope. The harder you push, the worse the reaction is. And
totally.
at a certain point, you got to realize there are things that you can't create.
No.
In your child, it's something that they have to choose. And
believe
me, I don't have this down by any means.
Well, I don't either. I'm learning. I decided a long time ago as a parent that it was more important for me to be in relationship with my children than to be in control over my children. And that set a tone for a lot of things for us, because I discovered when my children were very young, and I had a 6-month-old who only took a 30-minute nap a day, I couldn't make him sleep. The truth was, he didn't need a lot of sleep. To this day, he doesn't. That was our first child. It was a painful entry. And so, as I watched again and again, I can't control my children. I have a child with low spectrum ODD, oppositional defiance disorder. I thought that was just a nice way of saying, oh, those poor parents, they just don't know what to do. That's why their child acts like this. And then I got a child with oppositional defiance disorder.
Oh, yeah. It's
and, that child will teach you real quick that you can't control that child. And as I wrestled with those things in prayer and processed those things in safe spaces in my fellowship of typically sisters in Christ, close friends who love Jesus, I discovered that control just wasn't going to be what worked. Way earlier than the teenage years. And so while that time was very painful and difficult to live through, and I had to be stripped of a lot of things that I thought were going to work as a parent, and lay constantly at the feet of Jesus, really begging him to give wisdom and aid and support and understanding for this thing that was so much harder being a parent than I could have ever imagined. He actually really freed us from a lot of things that typically people are dealing with now with teenagers, right? Which is discovering you're not in charge. You can't control them. And so that really set me up for, I think, some of the success that we have now. And it's not that we're not the parent. We are. It's just that we're family as well. And we're in relationship. And saying again and again to our children through the way we're in relationship with them, I see you, I value you, I'm your safe space. I'm also your wall that you can rail against. I'll be here. And I will support you. Research shows again and again that kids need more than anything from their parents to be enjoyed. And so that's, That's my question to my teenager the other day. Do you know I enjoy you?
Hmm.
And also we all need to know that we can make good decisions, you know? Uh,
Absolutely.
so the more opportunities we give our children as age appropriate to say, I trust you to make a good decision here. And then, like you said, to not nag them, to let the decision be what it is, and to believe that they can learn from it and grow up from it because of the way you function as a family. Amazing things start to happen.
One of the
I'm sorry. I'm just, parenting used to be the hardest thing I do next to marriage. And now, I'm just so grateful that while it's not easy, while we still deal with so many things, it's really very rewarding at this point in life. So,
well, thank God for that.
oh,
Absolutely. Well,
my mother keeps saying, just wait, it'll get worse. And I'm like, quit with that.
yeah, I don't want a realism right now, please.
Yeah.
One of the other things that came up on our parent survey, over 1/3 of the parents who responded talked about the challenge of conflict among siblings. You think about that, I mean, that's a reality in life anyway, but when you're thrown in a lockdown, you can't go places, you're around each other all
Yeah.
the time.
Yeah.
You have 5 sons, so I'm sure I don't have to tell you. What are some things that you've learned through experience in dealing with sibling conflicts?
Yeah, that would not be the place where I feel like we're really thriving and am just deeply rewarded as a parent just yet. But, we have a lot of testosterone in this house. We have a flock of chickens. I sell eggs, and I joke that it's like having a bunch of roosters in one coop. And anybody knows anything about chickens, that's not a good idea to have too many roosters. And that's often what it feels like in our house, right? And they're so often competing for their place. And I hear that girls do the same thing in different ways. Ours is a physical dynamic.
Sure.
Whereas I hear for girls, which I joke I'll never know, not having daughters, it's more of a verbal thing. I hear parents say, oh, but girls have so much attitude. And I'm like, oh, my boys have attitude. So the conflict thing, one of the things I say, 2 things a lot to try to nip it up front. And I say it so much that sometimes I walk around the house saying out loud, repetition works, repetition works, repetition works. Because it does, but it just takes time to be absorbed. And then on top of the absorbed, believed. But I say a lot, this is not your conversation. One of the most unhelpful things my children do is step in to other conversations being had by their siblings or that their sibling is having with me. And they think they know, they're telling me what I don't know. Every parent listening is familiar. I don't have to explain that any further. So one of the things I just say is, this is not your conversation. Thank you. And if they persist, I say, I don't know how else to explain this. This is not your conversation and you should excuse yourself now. Thank you. If I know that child's probably not going to choose that, and I need to create private space, I invite them into my office, which is also known as the bathroom downstairs, and we turn on the fan and close the door. So that no one can actually interrupt, right? Sure. And again, yeah. So one of the things that I say a lot, and I talk about this in my book, is conversation boundaries. This is not your conversation. Another thing is we've been home together more and more and more is them saying to each other, well, mom said, because I'm the parent home the most. And one of the things that I've been able to say to the older children is, I'm sorry, really, when you do that, you're assuming you were there for the conversation that you missed. You think you know all the backstory behind it. You don't. And what you need to really do is just come ask me. Don't even discuss this piece with your siblings that they know nothing about. You don't have to argue it with them. Just come ask me and let's just work this out and keep things simple. Why frustrate yourself? So again, it's setting them free from frustration that's not necessary. That's really been helpful. And then another one is My almost 12-year-old, who's always been this really sweet, easy kid, is suddenly becoming quite difficult. Surprise, surprise. And he said to me the other day about one of his siblings who he has the most conflict, because there's usually that one, right? Or that pair
Sure.
or whatever. And I said to him, listen, I know that he bothers you. Oh no, Mom. His very presence annoys me. And he had this utter look of disgust on his face. And I said, okay, it's good to be real clear on that. His utter presence annoys you. I understand. I said, then why be in his presence so much? If he's in the room and you're annoyed, you know what you can do? You can choose. You have the power and ability to go to a different room. You can go outside. So again, it's saying you can make good choices here. These are your options. Choose them for yourself and have some victory. Have some freedom of not being annoyed by the brother who drives you crazy just by being present. So those have been some of the different things that I have done. Also, when there's just a pattern and it's real obvious that there's certain buttons that are getting pushed again and again and again, and because we're together so much, it doesn't take as long to figure that out. You know, I've pulled aside some of the older kids who are really annoyed by the younger kids and just said, hey, listen, I know that it's been really hard. I get it. We're together way too much right now. But I believe that you can do blank today. Do you think you can? And they're like, and I'm like, great. Let's see how that plays out. And later on in the day, something will happen. And I'll look at them like, I know you can do it. And I just walk away. And again, it's empowering them to choose to be the fullness of who Christ is inviting them to be. It's inviting them to choose what's good and right. And that's found some legs, and it's been really beautiful to watch. And then the other thing is now they're getting older, I don't do it as much. I called it power up when they were little. The oldest child didn't take a nap at age 2.5 any longer. He just didn't need to. But I had a toddler. I was pregnant. I was exhausted. And so because my husband's a contractor, and at that time his tools were charged in our kitchen on the counter, his battery operated tools, and he'd go and watch. And when Dad, the light turned green, they're ready, they're powered up, is what he would say. So I'd say, hey, after lunch, hey, I know that you're not tired, but you've used up a lot of your battery. So we're going to power up so you can play as hard as you can for the rest of the day. And we learned the practice of an hour, a whole hour. And it's like potty training. You have to teach them.
Sure.
But we learned the practice of power up. And we haven't done that for a while because of the age of the children, but because we're home together, the kid who just finished 5th grade said to me the other day, Mom, I just really need power up. Can we start doing that again? And it's like we call it now our reset button, where negative energy is getting higher. We're all with each other. And after that hour, we're just better because we've all had a moment to withdraw. And so those kind of things also help with conflict, creating space where people can be by themselves for a moment, doing quiet activities. And then the other thing is every day by 4:00, even my child who'd be happy never seeing the sun at all because he's a homebody, I kick him out the door. It's just not a choice. And once they get out there, I usually have to drag them back in by dinner time.
That's great.
Those have been our strategies around here. What works for one family doesn't work for another. The nuances of it vary from house to house and child to child. But I'm convinced that telling a child, I know you can do blank, and then cheering them on with little, things like, I know you can do it, as they're wanting to lose it, and celebrating their ability, and then walking away and trusting them instead of overbearing and, like you said, nagging. It creates a lot of freedom, and either they don't choose it and they live with that and it washes over and we all move on, or they do. For those who are like, well, that must all be really nice, my children are at each other constantly, I get that too. I have a child who used to have a physical and emotional event every day that lasted 1.5 to 2 hours. And And we lived like that for a long time because we needed more support than I had and my husband had to give. That's hard right now. Kids aren't well designed for telehealth. But if there are people who are really struggling and just nothing seems to work, I'd encourage you to reach out to a safe space and see what other options there are to explore. I have a child who we had no idea wasn't sleeping through the night. I knew sleep was hard. We'd been giving him melatonin for a long time. During this time of being home together, we discovered he was awake for an hour and a half sometimes in the night. Well, go figure that every day he literally lost his ever-loving mind over every little thing. Literally, and it was expressed physically. He put a hole through one of our cabinet doors during coronavirus pandemic. So, when things are like that, it's worth asking what is going on here, and exploring that and finding support and troubleshooting it, because life doesn't have to be like that. That's not within the range of normal family stuff.
One other thing from the survey that I wanted to talk about, or have you talk about, was the use of technology, particularly, which I think is exacerbated now with the lockdown. And, a lot of parents struggle with how they can use their, I guess, their role as parents to impose helpful limits. But, and we understand we have the authority, I guess, that you could say to do that. But how can parents talk with their children about these limits in ways that are fruitful and not just conflictual or authoritarian?
Yeah. So our kids have lost so much during this time. Our family had a really restrictive use of screens. And when I say screens, I'm saying phones, laptops, iPads, screens like that. Ours, it was really limited prior to this, as you're referring to it, lockdown or stay at home healthy. We did a lot of play dates. We had our sports. We, prior to this, only had a very dated iPad that was temperamental at best and has literally lines through it where the pixels are permanently gone. And my laptop and my husband's, our kids in our house don't get a phone until they're 15. So that was pretty contained in our house when this started. And part of what I did was I upped the ante and said, look, you're losing a lot. We're going to change this. I invited our oldest to make a proposal to my husband and I of what they thought was reasonable screen uses while so many other options were no longer available to them. What they were going to be using the screen for, how much time a day. And they actually gave themselves less time than I was inclined to give them.
Wow.
So it was like my husband, who was really, he's like, I'm trusting you, but I'm not feeling good about this. This could be crazy. And they left the room after the four of us talked, and he was like, wow, that really worked out to our favor. They could have had more. So part of it was, again, that whole thing of, let's practice making a good choice for yourself. Let's practice supporting you as parents. There's a theme here in this conversation we're having, Mike, and work this out for yourself. My son with the phone, one of the things that I'll ask is not, why are you on your phone? Because it's really accusatory, right? Why are you doing blank makes all of us naturally a little defensive, even in a safe relationship. But hey, what are you doing? It's different. And my oldest is like, yeah, I'm getting off, because he realizes he's been on it too long. In my book, A Life Shared, Meaningful Conversations with Our Kids, I have a chapter about screens and technology device, or not a whole chapter, but it's in a chapter. And at the end of it, I'm like, what are all the devices, technology devices in your home? They're tools. What do you use them for? So I think this is a really helpful time for parents to say, okay, these are the things we have. They are tools to serve us. How are they serving us, or are they ruling over us? So I think it's a great time to kind of reflectively look at that, be honest about it, and then as a family make new decisions. I think also for those of us who are like me, who don't really love that my kids are doing their schoolwork online and constantly in front of a screen, it feels like, knowing that it's a unique time. It's not what we would have chosen, but it's going to be okay. And these are things that we work out. And when we make decisions that we thought were going to go really great and then they don't, we can work it out again. Nothing's fixed. And then also asking, how is it affecting your children? Is it really a bad thing, or is it that you just don't like it this way? Just looking at it and asking some thoughtful, intentional questions can really shape it. And then in our house, there's a time limit. By a certain time, I just collect all the screens and put them away.
Mm.
And I also ask them to keep track of how they're using their time. And that is creating some internal choice and also responsibility. I have a child who likes to run off and hide with his screens. And I said to him yesterday, I said, "Hey, buddy, what are you doing over there?" And he was like, "I'm not hiding it." And I said, "No, you're not. I see you. Thank you for not hiding it. But what are you doing?" And my phrase is, "You're taking something that I didn't give you. I need you to bring it to me." And in the past, I actually would have gotten really frustrated, and it would have been this battle constantly. But I can see how hard it is for him and that he's trying. And so I've chosen just to realize it's harder for him than it is for me to manage. And he hands me the screen and he mopes off, and time passes and it's okay. So I don't know anybody's got that figured out, but thoughtful reflections and finding something that works for your family is really the goal.
Well, Ellen, it's been great to have you today, and I really appreciate what you've shared today, and of course your friendship and your ministry, and really some good practical tools. Thinking about beyond this conversation, if they're for parents who are seeking ongoing support, I know your website, alifesharedwithkids.com, presents some of these resources that you offer, but maybe you could talk about that just for a minute, what you offer through your ministry.
Yeah, so my website is actually really regrettable. I have an advisory council because I am really a big fan of functioning as the body. Knowing that no one person knows and can see their blind spots. And I'm just a real big fan of functioning in community and collaboration and benefiting from the gifts and strengths that Christ has given to all of us. I'm pretty limited and finite. And so I'm so grateful for my advisory council. And at our last, we meet quarterly, and our last one, I was like, "So how's your website coming?" I think it's time to make it look professional. She's like, "And you don't even have your parent coaching up there." And I was like, "It's on the to-do list. I promise." So the website is there. The things that you can really benefit from the website, if you're looking for support, is one, how to contact me. There's a contact tab. So if you're saying, "Oh my gosh, I really need some practical tools. I need some fresh perspective. I need, I met with a client yesterday, and she's like, "Well, we could do this or this." And I'm like, "Is there another way?" Because so often we see the one on the left or the one on the right. And I'm like, "Could there be another option?" And she was able to discover some really fabulous things that hadn't been considered as we worked through it. So they can contact me through the website, the contact tab. Also, they can go there and see things that are said about my book. At this point, Amazon, it has 32 5-star reviews on Amazon, so they can get feedback about the book if they're curious and whether or not it's worth investing in for them. And then I have a monthly blog post that I do there. And this year has been all about reframe. And it will be going live hopefully this afternoon, depending on how life plays out. It's raining all day here, so I'm not sure. But yeah, so the blog is a fresh, encouraging perspective. And then if somebody is like, "I just need some support," that's what the parent coach is about. It's not for me to give advice. It's not for me to tell people how to be parents. It's safe space for them to discover how they can accomplish their own goals. And it's amazing when I have a client who's wrapped up and I'm like, "The confidence you have now is really amazing." And part of what you do as a parent coach is you work yourself out of a job where they don't need you. So that's proven to be a lot of fun. So yeah, those are things. The website has the blog, has a contact, and Hopefully before fall, it's going to have all the parent coach stuff. And then they can also find videos on YouTube. If they type up A Life Shared, parenting helps. I got that from one of my kids who said one day, I just need a couple of helps, Mom. He was stuck 20 feet up in a sugar maple tree. So we all need some parenting helps, right? So A Life Shared, parenting helps, has 3 4-minute videos there of little things that are reflective and practical. I think that covers it. The videos, the blog, parent coaching, and the book.
Well, pray God's blessings for you and your family, Ellen, you and Andrew, and this ongoing journey of these 5 sons. And I would ask, as we complete our conversation, if you would offer a prayer for all the parents and the challenges that we face together.
Yeah, I would be really honored to. I'm going to take off my glasses because I'm getting a little teary as you even say that. Jesus, I thank you so much that you are our God, and that we are your people. I thank you that you are always inviting us to live into the fullness of that reality more and more. And I thank you that your love is so deep and wide. And I ask for each of us that are, for Mike and I, and for those watching, that that you would reveal the fullness of your love for us in ways that we have not yet seen. Lord, I pray for the parent who is weeping right now because they're weary and they're discouraged. Lord, we've all been there, and I ask that you just come by the presence of your Holy Spirit and touch them and comfort them, that you offer them hope. You are our hope, and in you we are not disappointed. I pray, Lord, where we have meant really well as parents, that you're showing us that it's just not working and inviting us in a new way, that we would trust you with that guidance. We'd have the humility to let go, to quit banging our head against a wall, to quit trying to open that door that just wasn't made to be opened, not the way we're trying to, or not by us, and that you would lead us in a new way, and that we would experience victory. I pray that households that where there's more yelling than laughing, that you would flip that on its head. I thank you that you have done that in our family again and again, and I pray for families where that's needed, that you would do it for them now. Lord, you invite us to work at our salvation in fear and trembling. You don't invite us to do that in our strength, but in our weakness with you and your strength. So come, carry us, lead us and support us, encourage us, show us safe spaces with our brothers and sisters who know you and love you, to share in fellowship during this hard time, to encourage one another and support one another. Lord, truly you are with us and you are for us and our families. May that be what we live in, what we see, and what we know. Thank you for Mike and his family. Thank you for his pastoral heart and his intentionality to attend to his people. And I pray that for each of our households, we could say this is a time that wasn't pretty, might not have been easy, but that you came and you met us and beautiful things happened. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Ellen, very much, and thanks for your time, and God bless you.
Yeah. Hey, Mike, I just really sense that somebody who's going to watch this, or maybe a few, just need to know that they're not alone.
Mm-hmm.
We feel alone because we're so confined. And we look at others and it looks like from the outside that they've got it all together, but none of us have got it all together. And just encourage those of you who feel very alone that you're not,
Mm.
that you're not. And even if you haven't found your safe space yet to be in fellowship, keep looking. Jesus longs for that for you. And where you are, it's a moment. It's not forever.
It's like those Christmas letters that we get. I always call them the perfect family Christmas letter, you know, and always long for people to send honest family Christmas letters.
Oh, it's so funny. I once had somebody after a workshop share that she wished I had shared some of my struggles. And what she didn't know is that the ongoing struggles aren't just about me. So they're not just mine to share.
That's true.
And my children's dignity and their privacy and the things that are really honest about who we are. And surely, hopefully people have discovered through this time together that there's no pretense here. Like, I'm
That's
willing to be honest and real about how this works. I think we all do better that way. But some things aren't just mine to share,
That's right.
They're for my kids to share. And so we have what we call family conversation only in this house. And I can't share those publicly. Maybe one day I will. I joke that when they're all grown up and I'm a grandmother, that I may pursue comedy and share those things then.
Right.
But they're not mine to share today. Maybe in 10 years, 5 years. But yeah. So, Mike, thank you so much.
Thank you, Ellen.
Thank
And we'll talk again soon.
Bye.